At 10:58 p.m., a county dispatcher in southern Michigan takes a call from a man who won't give a last name. He says his buddy, Mark, killed his girlfriend, Ava Lawson. He says the body's in a cooler, maybe two. Patrol units roll. Wrong address. Another call, new directions. Green metal roof, backlot, you'll smell bleach. When officers finally reach Mark Dalton's door and crack one sealed plastic cooler, what they see launches a homicide investigation and a courtroom fight over whether that single peek was even legal. If investigators had opened that lid the wrong way, could the whole case collapse? Let's talk about it. Tonight we're walking through a case I'm calling the Ava Lawson case. We're changing names and some details, but the core lessons are real and urgent. This is about domestic violence that escalates behind closed doors, about a bystander whose phone call may have saved a prosecution, and about how the US Constitution, specifically the Fourth Amendment, can decide whether critical evidence ever sees a courtroom. Before any police report, Ava Lawson was a daughter, a sister, a friend who never missed a niece's school play. She worked part-time at a discount home store and picked up seasonal garden shifts when the weather turned. People in her circle describe her as the kind who remembered the exact day you said you liked sunflowers and then showed up with seeds 2 months later. Like a lot of us, Ava's life wasn't a straight line. She'd moved in and out of small apartments across the county, sometimes with roommates, sometimes with her boyfriend Mark, sometimes back with family for a few months when money got tight. Friends say she could be fiercely independent, and then suddenly gone quiet for days when relationship stress flared. That push-pull pattern matters in this story because cycles of connection, conflict, retreat, and reconciliation are common in domestic abuse dynamics, even when no one involved is ready to call it abuse yet. I'm not diagnosing anyone. I'm telling you the risk factors advocates look for: isolation, financial control, volatility, and sudden disappearance from social contact. Keep those in mind as we continue. If you've ever worried about a friend caught in a relationship that swings between really good and really scary, drop a sunflower emoji in the comments so others know they're not alone. Mark Dalton and Ava were on again, off again for more than 3 years. When things were good, family barbecues, fishing weekends, shared rent. When it was bad, accusations, long absences, and at least one neighbor recall of shouting that ended with a slammed door and tires peeling out. According to later statements given to investigators again, these are reported statements, not courtroom facts, Mark minimized the fights. He told a friend she got loud, that he just smacked her, that she would cool off. That minimizing language, just only got loud, shows up over and over in post-incident interviews in domestic violence cases. Experts say when someone downplays force, "I only pushed her," it's a red flag. Because what's minimized in words can be serious in reality. File that away. May 21st. It's a Thursday heading into Memorial Day weekend. A man calls County Dispatch. He gives a first name. Let's call him Eric. He says Mark confided something horrifying. Ava's dead. Eric says Mark told him there was a mess and that he was storing her until he figured out what to do. The caller is shaky on the address, says he was there once. Something about a green metal roof, maybe an outbuilding, maybe an upstairs unit. Dispatch punches in possibilities while units roll. The first check turns up nothing. Officers regroup over radio. Eric calls back, "I'm telling you, it smells like bleach." That detail, whether fully accurate or not, pushes urgency. The search radius tightens. This is why bystander reporting matters. You don't have to be perfect, you just have to call. Officers reach a 3-unit building behind a repair shop, green metal roofing across the back half. It's just after 11. Lights are on in the upstairs corner unit listed to Mark Dalton. 2 officers knock. Mark opens, steps out onto the landing, and pulls the door mostly shut behind him. Classic distancing move. He says Ava's not there, says the apartment's a mess, says give him a minute. Police have a reported homicide tip, but no warrant. At this stage, they're in what's called a knock and talk. They can ask questions. He can refuse. The moment they push past him without consent, unless an emergency exception applies, they risk a bad search. Mark stalls. Officers radio a supervisor. Mark is told he's being temporarily detained while they secure the scene and apply for a warrant. He's cuffed for officer safety, common when violent crime is alleged. Now here's the legal tension. Can someone in cuffs give real consent, or is anything they agree to automatically coerced? Hold that thought. After several minutes, accounts vary. Mark says an officer can just take a quick look to see Ava's not inside. In exchange, he wants the cuffs off. Officers agree. One officer steps inside while another maintains visual. From a legal standpoint, this is the moment the defense will later attack. Was that consent free or the product of detention pressure? Our answer coming up. Inside the main room, clutter, stacked storage tubs, and one waist-high plastic cooler with latches taped closed. The officer asks what's inside. Mark, now recuffed outside, says something about gear for the lake. The officer radios out, confers, then flips the latches, lifts the lid a few inches, freezes, puts the lid back down, steps out. Radio traffic spikes. Scene secured. Because we tell stories with respect on this channel, I'm not going to describe what the officer saw. Reports will later state that human remains consistent with an adult female were visible in that cooler. Mark Dalton is arrested on probable cause. A full search warrant is fast-tracked. With a warrant, signed in the early hours, investigators re-enter the apartment systematically. A second, smaller cooler is located in a storage alcove. Both are removed, sealed. Crime lab teams process the space. Chemical residue swabs, drain captures, luminol on flooring seams, cut marks on utility knives collected for analysis. Digital devices, Mark's phone, a shared tablet, and an external hard drive are boxed. Investigators pull texts backing up relationship volatility, arguments about money, accusations of cheating, and a chilling line from Ava a week earlier. If I disappear, tell my sister to check the freezers. Autopsy and lab work will later help narrow a window of death and support prosecution theories about intent, post-mortem handling, and attempts to slow decomposition. Within days, prosecutors file charges: second-degree homicide, mutilation and concealment of a body, and evidence tampering. Additional domestic assault counts are reviewed but held pending further interviews. Mark pleads not guilty at arraignment. Defense counsel signals an aggressive suppression motion. Everything the police saw inside the apartment, including the cooler, should be thrown out as the fruit of an unconstitutional warrantless search, they argue, because Mark's so-called consent came while he was in cuffs and after officers threatened to sit here all night while getting a warrant. Suppression hearings in cases like this can make or break the prosecution. Let's break down what the court has to decide. The Fourth Amendment protects against unreasonable searches and seizures. In most situations, police need a warrant signed by a judge before entering a private residence. But there are exceptions. Let's hit the big ones relevant here. Consent. If an authorized person freely and voluntarily lets officers in, a warrant isn't required. Key words: freely and voluntarily. Courts look at whether the person was detained, threatened, intoxicated, or misled. Exigent circumstances, immediate danger to life, risk of evidence destruction, or hot pursuit can justify quick entry. Protective sweep, officer safety. Limited checks for people who might harm officers, not a full evidence search. Good faith reliance on warrant. Even if the path to evidence is messy, a later warrant based on independent probable cause may cleanse certain errors depending on jurisdiction. In the Ava Lawson case, the defense says consent was coerced. Mark in cuffs, late at night, facing armed officers. Prosecutors counter, there was a homicide tip, officers limited their look. And Mark explicitly authorized a quick check. The judge ultimately allows the evidence, finding that under the totality of the circumstances, consent was sufficiently voluntary and that the later warrant independently supported seizure.
While awaiting trial at the county jail,
Mark reportedly talks too much. Cellmates later tell investigators he admitted strangling Ava after an argument and panicking about what to do next. Jail calls, always recorded, capture him warning another contact to keep quiet about the coolers. When Mark decides one inmate snitched, he allegedly assaults that inmate in a shower area. Prosecutors add an attempted criminal sexual conduct count, arguing the assault was retaliatory and coercive. That new charge increases leverage at the plea table. Facing damning forensic evidence, cellmate testimony, and a judge who has just refused to toss the cooler discovery, Mark changes strategy. On the eve of jury selection, he enters a no-contest plea to second-degree homicide, attempted dismemberment and concealment, and attempted third-degree criminal sexual conduct related to the jail assault. What is no contest? It's a plea where the defendant doesn't admit the factual allegations in open court, but agrees that the prosecution has enough evidence to convict. Courts treat it like a guilty plea for sentencing. Defendants sometimes choose it to limit exposure in related civil suits, or when memory, intoxication, or mental health factors muddy the facts. The judge accepts the plea after establishing that Mark understands the consequences and that a factual basis exists in the record, witness statements, forensic reports, and his own recorded jail calls. Sentencing day draws a packed courtroom. Ava's family fills the gallery wearing yellow ribbons, her favorite color. Her sister reads a statement. "We warned you she was afraid. You laughed." The court imposes a 40 to 60-year prison term for second-degree homicide, an additional 2 to 5-year term for attempted dismemberment and concealment runs consecutively. The retaliatory jail assault adds 3 more years minimum, also consecutive. With good time credits uncertain and parole discretion decades away, Mark Dalton may spend the rest of his life in state custody. He is ordered to pay restitution for funeral costs and investigative expenses. Because of the assault charge, he must register as a lifetime sex offender under state law. Numbers on a sentencing sheet can never restore a life, but accountability matters. So, what do we take from Ava's story? I want to leave you with 3 things: safety, speaking up, and procedure. 1. Safety in relationships. If someone in your life cycles between love bombing and intimidation, if they monitor your phone, or if you've ever said, "If something happens to me, tell my sister," those are not dramatic statements. Those are risk signals. Reach out to a hotline or trusted advocate. You deserve help before a crisis. 2. Speak up early. Eric, the tipster, wasn't sure of the address. He called anyway. That imperfect call launched everything that followed. If something feels wrong, call. You don't have to have proof. 3. Procedure protects justice. Law enforcement professionals. Document consent clearly. Body cams, written waivers, recorded advisals. The difference between a lawful search and suppressed evidence can be a single line in a report. If you've worked in law enforcement or legal defense and seen a case turn on a search issue, share what happened, no identifying details, in the comments. You'll help more people understand the process. All right, your turn. Put yourself in the judge's chair. Should the cooler evidence stay in or get tossed because consent was given in cuffs? Tell me why. Cite officer safety, exigent circumstances, coercion, whatever argument you'd make. I read as many comments as I can, and thoughtful legal takes get pinned. And if you want to boost visibility for domestic violence resources, comment "Justice for Ava" so this episode travels further in the algorithm. Thank you for spending time honoring Ava Lawson and learning how investigative procedure and the Constitution intersect in real cases. If this kind of respectful, fact-driven storytelling is your thing, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because next week we're breaking down a case where a fitness tracker became the key witness in a suspicious death. Until then, take care of yourself, check on your people, and remember, silence protects no one.